YouTubers, welcome to the Aqua Hobbyist YouTube channel, and you have the honor of watching the first video that I ever uploaded to YouTube. I decided this morning that I wanted to share with some friends my fish tank, and rather than waiting until I know everything there is to know about YouTube and how to shoot a good video, I'm just gonna have some fun with it. So that's what you're watching. And let's start off with my tank. I set up my first fish tank when I was like 9 years old in the country of Norway, and had a lot of fun keeping fish through my childhood and my teens. Then I revisited the hobby back in the 90s, and now almost 40 years after I set up my first fish tank, I have entered the hobby again. And I found this 29-gallon NanoCube, which I used to keep saltwater fish in about 9-10 years ago. And I thought, well, what should I do? I remember these fish that I really liked back when I did freshwater, the German ram. That's a great fish. Colorful, interesting behavior. There's the male, and the one I just showed you with the red sort of stomach, that's the female. And I didn't really want to get into the heavy species tank. I wanted a nice looking tank, and my girlfriend, she said she always wanted a fish tank, and she liked these glowing fish. She said, I'm not sure what they are. And I knew what she was talking about. She was probably talking about neon tetra, which you see in the background, the red and blue kind of fluorescent looking fish. And so I decided to get some of those, but these are actually not neon tetras. These are a variant of the neon tetra, which is even more colorful, and that's the cardinal tetra. And I can talk more about that in another video, but one benefit of putting these together in the same tank rather than setting up like a specialized tank just for German rams is that the German rams, they are kind of protective of their territory. You can see the male here is sort of hovering over the tree root there, and when that happens, he basically asserts himself to the other fish in the tank, and they feel a little threatened, which means for the neon tetra, they will school, they will form together to a clump. That's what they do in nature, trying to look bigger and more imposing to the predators. So I think the neon tetra, or the cardinal tetra rather, in my tank, I think they're pretty relaxed and happy most of the time, but occasionally they'll school together when they're a little stressed, and that makes a spectacular sight. See if I can show you that later. So let's see, where do I start? Oh yes, so I made a very exciting discovery as I started a couple of hours ago to prepare to post this video, and I noticed the rams, they were sort of migrating towards the middle of the tank here all the time, which they haven't done before. Now, I've seen them laid eggs in the past. The female would lay eggs in the back of the tank. She would dig kind of like a hole and then lay her eggs, but the male was sort of in the opposite corner of the tank, and I don't think those eggs were fertile. I don't know what happened to them. Most likely they were eaten by other fish or the parents, because German rams will do that sometimes, eat their eggs if they think that the eggs will be eaten by other fish. So this time around, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but if you look down here on that root driftwood, you see a bunch of eggs. Gosh, there has to be, let's zoom in on that. There has to be hundreds of them. So, and they look fertile. They have a little bit, they're not all white. So that is very exciting for me, guys, and hopefully for you too. Now, if you don't know anything about German rams, they are a dwarf cichlid from South America, I believe, and they are very colorful, very peaceful. Back when I used to keep them in the 90s, they were known as being very good parents, and I'm told that because they've been bred so much in captivity, breeders, they really want to keep all their eggs. They want as many of them as possible to hatch. So typically what they do, they siphon out the eggs, and thereby the parents don't get to raise the fry, and they don't, when the babies grow up, they haven't learned really to be good parents. So that's a great shame. I think eventually I will set this pair up in a smaller tank where they're on their own. I think your chances of them being good parents are much greater in a separate tank, and it doesn't have to be a big tank, you know, maybe a 10-gallon, 5-gallon perhaps even might do, and your chances of ending up with being able to raise some fries are much greater. So again, I haven't decided what to do. I've been doing some research on the internet this morning, and what I read is that your chances of being able to raise the babies in a environment such as this, they're close to nil. There are just too many threats, and when the parents feel threatened, they're just going to end up eating the eggs themselves. It's kind of like, well, if I'm not going to be able to raise these, at least I'm going to get some good nutrition out of it. And you can't really blame them. So what I might end up doing here, although I really don't like, I like nature to take its course, and that's what I did with a prior batch of eggs they laid. I might try to siphon these out and keep them in some kind of floating container on top of my tank. I mean, on top of the water surface, basically, so they can hatch there, and I can feed them infusoria. And aren't they beautiful, spectacular looking fish for freshwater fish? I think they're pretty amazing. I trying to find a description for these colors, but it's almost like a sunset margarita, if you ever had one of those. Very, very beautiful. And of course the colors are more intensified now that they are in prime breeding condition. And the female, you can tell now, I'm not an expert in describing aquarium fish, but the female will have this red pinkish spot on the middle around her stomach, which you can clearly see in this video. And she's smaller than the male. Now going back to the male, you see the male doesn't have that. And sometimes they will sparkle, they will have these bluish fluorescent spots on over their body. That's the best way I can describe the males and females now. I need to read up on the rams, but if you do decide to get up here, the most telling difference is that the female will have that red spot around her stomach. And in order not to make this not too long and boring, I think I'm gonna end this soon, post you guys with some updates. So let's get a shot of the female though before I go, so you can see the difference. You see the red color, and also if you look below her stomach towards the dorsal fin, or behind the dorsal fin, you see a little white tube sticking out, and that's the egg laying tube, which is through which the eggs are deposited. And I'm actually pretty amazed. See how close the cardinal tetras go, but they don't get close to the eggs because they know those are off limits. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. If you remember to like or subscribe this video, I promise you I will post more updates. Thanks again for watching guys, and have fun with your hobby.